Hey Bobcats, today we're going to talk about measurement conversions. So we're going to start with your Nearpod. The first thing I want to do is look at what do you remember when you think about measurement. So here I want you to share your thoughts. When I think about measurement, I remember blah. We've talked about measurements back in elementary school. You probably talked about measurements at home with your parents. So pause the video, take a minute to write this into your collaboration board. After you have posted what you remember, take about 30 seconds to a minute and read what your friends have posted as well. Because sometimes you guys have talked about what your friends have talked about. So think about what do you remember, but what do your friends remember as well?
Miss Kagan.
Okay, so you guys did really well in your collaboration. I like the stuff you guys put for your remembering because we use measurement all the time everywhere. And I'm gonna go ahead because this video is really short. I'm gonna include it into the video in case it doesn't play on your Nearpod.
Theater. Once upon a time, there were two kings. One of the kings was very traditional. He wore a heavy golden crown, sat on a throne, and ruled with an iron fist. No, he did not do that. Hitting people is wrong. But he was kind of stuck in the past, so he let his kingdom go on using the old customary system of weights and measures. Units like feet, pounds, gallons, miles. The other king was a little more with it. He wore a regular suit to work. His kingdom used the metric system. Those are units of measurement based on the meter and the gram. The meter is a unit of length equal to a bit more than 3 feet. And the gram is a unit of mass equal to about 1 large paperclip. Well, metric measurements are divided up by units of 10. So learning the different measurements in the metric kingdom was a snap.
How many millimeters is a meter? How many centimeters is a meter? How many grams is a kilogram?
Customary measurements are divided up by fractions. People tend to use a lot, like quarters, eighths, thirds, and
That sounds like
halves.
me with my 8-year-old.
That makes them useful for common everyday measurements, but a real pain to convert to different units. And each kind of measurement has its own unique set of conversions. People in the metric kingdom didn't have that problem. No matter what they measured, the units increased by factors of 10. That made it easy to express metric measurements as decimals and to convert between different units. Customary measurements were more often expressed as fractions and weren't so easy to convert to different units. Well, eventually, all the other kingdoms switched over to the metric system. That made it hard for customary subjects to trade and communicate with others. They had no choice but to start using some metric measurements, and they started with their king. They overthrew him and sentenced him to a term of 10 years, 10 months, and 10 days in the dungeon. Why 10? Well, the people who invented the metric system didn't pick 10 randomly. It's derived from the fact that people have 10 fingers to count with.
But he only has 4.
This wasn't
Oh, okay. Clearly the system wasn't derived for him. Okay, so the Nearpod has your star reference sheet. I've also handed out a star reference sheet, but also if you go to your OneNote will have a star reference sheet, and it will be listed under the 6 weeks measurement conversion lesson. So using, how do I see the, oh, hide students, okay. Using the star reference sheet, I want you to look, what is the relationship between kilometers and meters? Write them as an equality. Okay, all you're doing is looking at your star chart and telling me what does it say about kilometers and meters. Type that in for me. You have about 30 more seconds. Okay, so when you're looking at your chart, 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. You don't have to put the other part because you're only focusing on kilometers and meters. I really like this one that says a meter is smaller, and if you have a kilometer, multiply by 1,000. Okay. So I like the fact that you thought about it logically, because a lot of times you'll know that the number is 1,000, but you struggle with, do I multiply by 1,000 or divide by 1,000? So if you think meter is smaller, then you'll know that you're going bigger to get to kilometer. I always like to think logically because there's always 2 answer choices, and a lot of times the you'll multiply instead of divide or divide instead of multiply. Okay, I'm not gonna play the whole video on this video because you have it in your Nearpod. Okay, so what is my ratio of horses to dogs? And when you're doing your ratio and they give you the data, always keep in mind the order that the questions asked. In this case, you want to look at how many horses were there, how many dogs were there. Okay, so go ahead and put your ratio for me, please. Okay, so I like this. A lot of people are saying 10 to 5 because we started off with 10 horses and 5 dogs. But you do want to always know that you can simplify your fraction. 10 and 5 are divisible by 5. So I'm going to say 10 divided by 5 equals 2. 5 divided by 5 equals 1. So a lot of times 10 to 5 won't be your answer choice. So you'll have to go down to the simplified version of 2 to 1. But yeah, this is just equivalent fractions, y'all. Yeah, I didn't dismiss you, so I don't know why you popped up like that. Okay? Okay, so he's done something wrong on this video, and we're gonna finish this portion after lunch, and I want you to think about what he did wrong, and we'll talk about it when we get back from lunch. Okay, now you may go to lunch. Okay, Zoomers. Okay. Okay, so if you look in your OneNote, you have your star reference, but I've also, oh, that is not the page I want. I also want you to add to the side where it says proportional relationships. I want you to put in the horses, if I can spell correctly. So go to your OneNote and put in horses to dogs. And remember, the horses to dogs was a 10 to 5 ratio, and we simplified by dividing by 5. That's called your greatest common factor. So your simplified version is actually going to be 2 to 1. And then in the video, he mentions dogs to horses. And he puts in correctly that there are 5 dogs for every 10 horses. But then when he simplifies it, he simplifies incorrectly. So I want you to add this to your notes. And then we will talk about how to correct it, and then we'll correct our notes as well. So pause the video. After you've added this to your OneNote, go back to your Nearpod and see if you can explain what he needs to do, what the correct dogs to horses should be. He said it was 1 to 5. We know it's not 1 to 5. Okay, so now go back to your Nearpod if you haven't already done so and tell me, what did the guy do wrong in the instructional piece? He said that the ratio of dogs to horses was 1 to 5, but that is incorrect. What should it be, and what did he do incorrectly? Pause the video, add it to your Nearpod. Okay, so when you're looking at it, instead of, so he simplified incorrectly, and it should actually be 10 to 5 simplified down to 2 to 1. So pause the video, go ahead and go back to your OneNote and add that to your notes, please. You will simplify again by the greatest common factor, which 5 and 10 share the number 5 or the factor 5. So when you simplify that down, it's going to be a 1 to 2 ratio, not a 1 to 5 ratio. He didn't divide 10 by 5 correctly. Okay. And so when you're looking at it, it said horses to dogs was 2 to 1, and that's how I saw that there was a problem, because if it's 2 to 1 and you flip the words to dogs to horses, then you'll flip the ratio 1 to 2. You always want to put your ratio in the same order as your words. Now think about length. How many inches are in a yard? Use your star reference sheet located in your OneNote or the one I gave you, and tell me how many inches are in a yard. Pause your video to put it into your Nearpod, please. Okay, so I just want to make a note here that when you look at your chart and you put 1 yard equals 3 feet, yes, you need that information, but that's not going to get you the answer, because you have to focus on the words inches and yards. So when you're going to your answer, you want to take the 1 yard is 3 feet, but then it also tells you there's 3 feet in a yard. And so when it tells you 3 feet in a yard, you take that, 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, and multiply that to get your 36. So 1 yard does equal 36 inches. 36 inches, because you have to convert, you have to do a double conversion. 1 yard equals 3 feet, 1 foot equals 12 inches, 3 times 12 gives you your 36 inches. So now I've kind of explained it, and I want you to take what I said and write it into your Nearpod. How did you calculate the inches in a yard? Because the reference chart does not go from inches to yards. So what did I do to get from inches to yards?
So the reason that I multiplied 12 times 3 is because on my star reference materials, it says that 1 foot is 12 inches, and if you have 3 of that 1 foot, you just do 12 times 3 and get whatever that is. Because, like,
Okay, good. So because you've got the 12 inches in a foot and the 3 feet in a yard, and then what did you end up with? How many inches were totaled for 1 yard?
for 1 yard, or for people, yeah, 1 yard is 36 inches.
Excellent. Okay, so remote learners, you are going to watch this video, pause my video and watch the video on the Nearpod, and then rejoin me. In the video, he goes on to say that you could have done x to y, but I want you to kind of go always y divided by x, because when you move into slope, you're always doing y divided by x. So that's kind of why I want you to always go in that direction. I've also put a copy of this page into your OneNote, so you have it as a reference. Now, let's look at your relationships. The table to the right shows the data for the relationship between inches and feet. What is a proportion that can be written from this table? What is the proportion that represents the relationship between inches and yards? And how do you know? So I want you to kind of think of what you just watched and what we talked about with inches and yards, and see, do your best. Pause the video and then come back and check when you're done. Okay, so this is a good proportion for feet to inches. But remember, the question is asking inches to feet. So make sure when you look at your proportion that you're answering it the way it is asked in the question. So when you're looking, it's asking you for inches to feet. And I like how you went back to your dependent and independent, and you do have your X and Y. So there's 12 inches in 1 foot. Another proportion would be 24 to 2 and 36 to 3. And then it says, so then when we go to inches to yards, just be careful here, you're giving me inches to feet. So inches to yards, we would actually say 36 inches to 1 yard. So we would have 36 inches to 1 yard. Okay, so what I did is just kind of showed you how your conversion works. We start with the conversion chart saying that there's 3 feet in 1 yard, so I multiply by 3. But we want to talk about inches, so there's 12 inches in 1 foot. You just take your 12 times 3 to get your 36 inches for 1 yard. So your proportion would be 36 inches to 1 yard, following the order of the words. Okay, now using your conversion chart, you're going to use a conversion chart to create a proportion to convert the problem below. So we know that we have 2,809 meters, and we're looking to see how many kilometers that is. Remember that you're going to fill in the missing parts using the proportion that we know 1,000 meters equals 1 kilometer. And you just need to use your decimal. Remember how to multiply and divide with decimals to help you. I'll give you a minute, pause your video and try that, add it to your Nearpod. Okay, you guys, so don't overthink this. Our chart says 1,000 kilometers, 1,000 meters is equal to 1 kilometer. And our question says that we have 2,809 meters. And we want to know how many kilometers that is. The easiest way to look at something like this is that I have the number 1 here and the number 1 here. When you are multiplying by tens or dividing by tens, just focus on the fact that there's 3 decimal places behind the 1. So I'm going to take this and I'm actually going backwards. And I'm saying, starting here, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 decimal places. So I'm going to take my 2, and the rest of it is my decimal portion of my answer. So don't overthink it. Yes, I can go into saying that this is so many kilometers, so many meters, centimeters, things like that. But we're really just looking for 2 and 809 10,000ths of a kilometer. Okay, and today is our first day talking about proportions. We really only focus on metric conversions. But I want to see how ratios and proportions, so tell me how you feel. Can you see how ratios and proportions are additional representations for the problems that you worked in the last unit? Remember when we talked about the last unit? Do you see the relationship? Okay. So if you think about it, that's kind of why they kind of showed you your X and Y table for independent and dependent, and proportions, that's all we're dealing with is your data points and seeing, can we go, does Y equal MX plus, does Y equal KX each time? Or if you're doing additive, does Y equal K plus B? Okay, now looking back at our Canvas agenda, the next thing we're going to do after our Nearpod is look into our, oops, that is 7th grade. Hold on. Okay, so looking into our Canvas agenda after our Nearpod, the next thing we're going to do is look at the measurement conversion notes. I'm actually going to push this to tomorrow. So you guys go ahead and we'll work on IXL today, and we will push the conversion notes to tomorrow's lesson. And remember, have a great day. And remember, okay, and remember,
Bobcat flight never dies.
excellent. What happens? Remember what?
Bobcat flight never dies.
Thank you guys.